So I'm actually going to be using this as well. I am teaching World War II class. It's more of a beginning level college class, advanced high school, and I'll just pass the class around. One of your big assignments this semester will have a lot of guest lectures of World War II veterans, so that you get to appreciate what actually happened with the Greatest Generation, and then you also learn how to thank veterans. And here is my version of this. You will see that the beginning is bullet points of everyone's story, and then at the end there's a paragraph summarizing it and pictures. So go ahead and pass that around. This will be your biggest assignment throughout the entire semester, because you have to actively keep up with it. You will also have a research paper and a PowerPoint presentation, which is what I will be showing you today is an example of your PowerPoint presentation. And here are, go ahead and just pass them around, your notes to follow along. You will be required to have one of these with your presentation in order for everyone to know what's going on, and we may have quizzes on them, so pay attention. So has anyone heard of the USS Indianapolis? Hands? Okay, 2. I'm actually surprised 2 people have heard of it. So here, we're going on. So the USS Indianapolis delivered the first atomic bomb to the island of Tajin on July 26, 1945. This is a tiny island near Guam, and this was a completely top secret mission. No one knew what was happening. It then, after dropping off the atomic bomb, reported to SINPAC, which is the commander-in-chief of the Pacific, which the headquarters was at Guam, to receive further orders. When they received further orders, she was ordered to join the battleship, the USS Idaho. The Idaho was located closer to the Philippines, which, as you know, is pretty far away. And I will explain later what was going on behind the scenes. But she was ordered to go join. This was at the Leaf Gulf in the Philippines, and they were prepared to help with the prepare for the invasion of Japan. They asked for an escort to this because they were a battleship traveling a far distance all by themselves, and Japanese submarines were very rampant in this area, but they were denied, and so unescorted, they departed from Guam for the Philippines, a course of 206 degrees, making about 17 knots an hour. Right here is the USS Idaho. At 12:14 a.m. on the 30th of July, 1945, they were hit by 2 torpedoes out of the 6 fired by a Japanese submarine. They were halfway kind of there. One blew out the bow, which is the front of the ship, and then the second one stuck midship, and it was really close to the fuel tank and the power magazine, which then caused a huge explosion. The explosion then caused for the ship to keel over and knock out all the power. Within 12 minutes, the USS Indianapolis sank. There were 1,196 aboard. Of them, here's a picture before they went out. Of them, 900 made it into the water. There was very few life rafts, and of those, most sailors only had the standard life jacket, which they either had this, or these were what it looked like. And then they were there for 5 days and 5 nights and 4 days. The shark attacks started about 30 minutes in. Not only did they start 30 minutes in, but then they got worse once the sun rose. They were stuck there, and this happened continually over 5 days. The worst part is they didn't know when the shark attacks were going to happen. They were happening intermittently. They tried to stay in groups, and they're floating around. Now, you've noticed when you're in water, for a long time, your fingers start to get pringly. After 5 days, when they eventually do get rescued, their skin's falling off because they are so waterlogged. So here's some example pictures of what they're dealing with. You bet you don't think cannibalism went on out there, do you? Buck. He is one of the survivors. We'll actually watch a video of this. When they started eating each other, this would attract more sharks, and then it became an eating frenzy. They were more common at night, but they weren't consistent, and you could see the sharks floating under them in the day. The first shark that was attacked, they say it was about a 15-foot tiger shark. So the distress call was sent out, and it made it to the Philippines, but they never checked on it. And then the USS Indianapolis was completely forgotten, even when they didn't show up. Here are some pictures of it. They were found by an American pilot who was looking for Japanese submarines. He was William B. Gwynn. He was a pilot of a PV-1 Ventura bomber en route for anti-submarine patrolling. So it was completely by accident. He sends out a distress call saying there's many men in the water. And then the PBY, which is a seaplane, so they can land on water, was sent out to find the many men in the water. He broke orders and landed when he saw how many men and all the shark attacks. On his way to them, he also passed by the USS Dorley, and he alerted the captain to the emergency. The captain, on his own authority, broke orders and diverted to where the men were in the water. Now, because the plane, of course, arrived hours before, like I said before, he landed in the water and him and his crew started pulling them into the plane, and once the plane was full, then he's pulling them onto the wings and tying them onto the wings. He saved about 56 people that way. And they say that this is the scariest time for them because at this point the sharks realized that food supply is leaving, and so there was a feeding frenzy. Not only did that happen, but the captain of the USS Door, it was at night when he finally got there, he lights up with his own light to notify the people in the water that help has come. So without any regard to their own safety, they're trying to save these men. In the end, only 317 men survived, and they were in the water for 5 days. What ended up happening afterwards is Captain McClave of the USS Intelligence was court-martialed. It later was discovered that there was a secret undercover mission that had just decoded Japanese messages and found out that there were 2 Japanese submarines in the path of the USS Indianapolis, but they never said anything to anyone. So he was court-martialed and then later committed suicide, even though it wasn't his fault. They also did not announce what happened to the USS Indianapolis until after Japan surrendered 15 days later. And then it didn't become public knowledge until years later. In the 1990s, they discovered what really happened when the files became declassified. Now here is a video of a
Submarine
First account.
slammed 2 torpedoes into our side tooth. It's coming back. The island of Tini and Delaney just delivered the bomb, the Hiroshima bomb. 1,100 men went into the water. Vessel went down in 12 minutes. Didn't see the first shark for about half an hour. Tiger, 13-footer. You know that when you're in the water, Chief? You tell by looking from the dorsal to the tail. What we didn't know was our bomb mission had been so secret. No distress signal had been sent. They didn't even list us overdue for a week. Very first light, Chief. Sharks come cruising. So we formed ourselves into tight groups. It's kind of like old squares in a battle, like you see in a calendar, like the Battle of Waterloo, and the idea was, shark comes the nearest man, that man he start pounding and hollering and screaming. Sometimes the shark would go away. Sometimes he wouldn't go away. Sometimes that shark, he looks right into you, right into your eyes. You know the thing about a shark, he's got lifeless eyes, black eyes, like a doll's eye. When he comes at you, he doesn't seem to be living until he bites you, and those black eyes roll over white, and then you hear that terrible high-pitched screaming. The ocean turns red, despite all the pounding and the hollering, they all come in and rip you to pieces. By the end of that first dawn, lost 100 men. I don't know how many sharks, maybe 1,000. I don't know how many men, they average 6 an hour. On Thursday morning, Chief, I bumped into a friend of mine, Herbie Robinson, Cleveland. Baseball player, bosun's mate. I thought he was asleep. Reached over to wake him up. Bobbed up and down in the water, it was like a kind of top, upended. Well, he'd been bitten in half below the waist. During the 5th day, Mr. Hooper, Lockheed Ventura, so she swung him low and he saw us to the young part of the lot. Younger than Mr. Hooper anyway, he saw us and he come in low, and 3 hours later a big fat PBY comes down and started to pick us up. That was the time I was most frightened, waiting for my turn. I'll never put on a life jacket again. So 1,100 men went in the water, 316 men come out, the sharks took the rest during the 29th, 1945. Anyway, we delivered the bomb.
So as you can see, you need to have a PowerPoint in which you have a worksheet, and your PowerPoint will be based on either a ship or a battle, and then if you want to do something else, come to me for approval on that, and then next week we'll be talking about your paper and your research topics, what we do. Any questions?
Is this at all related